speaker is from Spain, La Laguna University, and his name is Jacques Basaldua.
This video presentation is intended for Go players of any level with interest in computer Go, not necessarily computer scientists. I will start explaining the fundamentals about Monte-Carlo tree search, MCTS for short, which is the basic algorithm used by all strong engines nowadays. To summarize the content of this video, in first place I will explain how MCTS gives a robust solution to a central problem in computer Go, which is evaluating a board position. I will explain how Monte-Carlo methods without a tree are limited and the most basic version of MCTS. Then we will try out an engine a little bit to understand the importance of adding knowledge to it. We will have a further look at the strengths and weaknesses. I will also explain how the opening is one of the weak points. The next section is about what kind of knowledge can be extracted from large collections of professional and strong amateur games. How far can full board opening book be used in 19 by 19 Go? Also, how the ideas developed by Go experts can be implemented in a program. And finally, we will have a closer look at our solution, M-Eval. How the idea evolved as the program got stronger, what useful information it gives us about the position, how stronger does it make the program, and what do we think should be helpful in even stronger programs. The study of static evaluation in computer Go started in 1976 with a mathematical analysis of life and death by David Benson. This evaluation, with some later improvements, has been at the core of so-called classical engines for 3 decades. Unfortunately, at the time of making decisions about moves, groups are not settled. Full board search is not feasible in Go because of the width and depth of the problem. Therefore, static engines combine this evaluation with, at best, a short local search. In the following example, we can see what a classical engine thinks about a game. This game was played turn-based between low-dan players. Because of the long thinking times, it has no major blunders. The jumps in evaluation are caused by the engine only. After this move, the engine counts the white lower right as dead, which results in a huge black advantage. The truth is, white is still fighting for life and finally succeeds. Some moves later, the evaluation gives a huge jump to a white advantage. At this point, the white N7 group is alive. But later in the game, white trades this group for a larger advantage to the left. This trade aims not just at the J14 stones, but at the entire black stones which are in deep trouble now. Static evaluation does not understand such things. Even when black resigns after white L3, the engine does not understand B11 as dead. Just for a quick comparison, we can see how an MCTS engine understands the whole picture much better. Among other reasons, evaluation is so hard because it is required a long time before the position is made clear. Now, look at this position. Evaluating it is merely a matter of counting the black and white stones and the intersections fully surrounded by each color. This position is one of the possible outcomes of the previous one, which is here again. If the game is played out stubbornly until no legal moves other than eye-feeling moves remain, we reach a position that can be evaluated trivially and error-free. But this is only one of the possible outcomes of the previous position. We could also reach a position like this one with the top black group dead. The simplest possible Monte-Carlo engine is an engine without knowledge nor tree search. Before looking into this idea a bit more, we can see what it gives by selecting uniform random playouts in our MCTS engine and disabling the tree expansion. In the previous position, the MCTS engine recognized the life and death status of all the stones correctly. If we downgrade the engine to pure Monte-Carlo without knowledge, now it does not understand the black stones to the left as dead, but at least it understands the obviously dead stones as dead, which is a lot considering we did not introduce any knowledge. The engine is just doing random games and noting who wins each board intersection more often. These games are just played by selecting one move from all the legal moves at random, without filling 1-point eyes. To use it for playing rather than just evaluating, we try all the legal moves as first moves and we play the one with the best winning rate. The best part of this idea, besides its simplicity, is it only cares about winning the game. Remember that the final positions after the playouts are scored error-free, so near the end it can be strong assuming the position is simple enough so its lack of knowledge is not an issue. It has a great sense of the value of everything and always considers the entire board, so it will naturally go for an exchange if that leads to more paths to the final victory. Somehow, it has a natural sense for furikawari. On the other side, because random moves do not represent reasonable moves, it will play lots of bad moves. For instance, move destroying its own eye shape, killing groups that could live. It is not the same as not filling own eyes. If the group can make 2 eyes and you destroy its eye shape, not filling the only remaining eye yourself is not going to save it. Also, it has no sense whatsoever of answering moves. Especially when behind, it will play many self-atari moves because they could work against an opponent who did not answer them. The problem of not exploring correct answers to moves can be solved if we play the first move of each simulated game from a tree. To the right, we can see the tree as it is created in the beginning before the first simulated game. Each node represents a board position. The root node is the current position. The previous move was black since all the next moves are white. The other nodes represent the position reached after each possible legal move. Note that each node counts the number of times this position was played and how many times it was won by the player who did that move. Each node is also a tree itself, and as it gets more visits, it will be expanded by adding the legal moves following it. The whole idea is playing the most successful answer to each move most of the times. To know which move is more successful, of course, we have to explore the others. With a tree, at least in the beginning of the simulated games, most of the times a move will be answered by a correct move from the point of the player who answers. In a nutshell, MCTS is just repeating the following 4 steps many times and finally playing a move with the highest number of visits. The first step is playing down the tree the move with the best UCT values from all the candidate moves at each node. The UCT formula shown here was the first one suggested. Strong engines nowadays use some variation of this, including such things as rate evaluation, a priori values, knowledge bias, etc. The second step is, when a leaf is reached, check if it has enough visits. If this is the case, the leaf is expanded. All legal moves following it are added. After that, step 3. A random playout is played until a final position can be scored easily. Note that random does not mean uniform random, just randomized, as we will see. The resulting board is scored. And finally, step 4 is propagating that result from the last leaf play in the tree backwards to the root node. If the game was won by white, add 1 visit to each node and 1 win to all the nodes containing white moves. Until now, we have explained how to deal with making our simulation answer moves correctly, at least in the beginning. This is still not enough to make the idea work well. As mentioned, the random playouts contain so many bad moves they do not represent reasonable evaluation. I will not explain all possible ideas, but at least 4 things make the basic toolkit. The first idea is we must select moves, if any, capturing groups in Atari, extending from Atari, and Atarying again when the opponent has just extended from Atari. This gives some sense for ladders and makes the engine understand the need of defending stones like A below. The second is playing moves from patterns when they are available around the last move. This applies to about 40% of the moves in the playout and is very important as it gives natural answers. To the right, we can see the patterns developed by Sylvain Gély and Yizhao Wang for the program Mogo, which was the first MCTS engine dominating the Computer Go arena about 4 years ago. The third part is improving horrible eye-shaped destruction moves. We must make the engine as white play at A when it tries to play at B, otherwise it is killing its own group. We can live with the fact that the playouts do not understand the urgency of playing at A, because that would require a long analysis about what other possible ways of living the group has. If the move is urgent or not has to be decided in the tree, but at least B is always wrong and A dominates B. After A, B will never be played since it becomes a known eye-feeling move. The previous 3 ideas have been explained in the order in which they are usually implemented. This one is an additional restriction no matter how moves were chosen. It is about respecting groups alive in Seki. It is very important if we want to make the engine strong. Each engine author has its own rules probably, but a good rule of thumb that covers most cases is do not play self-Atari moves when the resulting group, including the new stone, has 3 stones or more. Note that 1 stone self-Atari moves like A are frequently good to remove eyes. Also, adding a second stone as in B is correct, but adding a third stone as in C is not, since the opponent can still make the eye. Also, typical Seki shapes like the bottom right are covered by this rule. Since we have given a solution to the major weaknesses of the simple Monte-Carlo engine, we can expect that the new strong points are the previous strong points, but now even enhanced because the evaluation in the playouts has improved. So, MCTS engines have a natural sense for the value of everything and reason in terms of playing towards a winning position, i.e., reaching a position from which pretty much every path is a win. At that point, the engine will probably play silly moves since it no longer finds any difference between moves when all moves win, but that can hardly be considered a drawback. The engine becomes very strong and creative in tactic, especially when these tactics decide the game. Even if we somehow solve the idea of answering moves, the tree search does not grow enough to get correct evaluation for positions in which correct value depends on long sequences. The tree search algorithm needs to explore alternatives. How else could it know that a move is the best answer if it did not explore the alternative moves to it? For that reason, even in the best known part of the tree, the path does not always include the correct answer. At each node, the correct answer is selected most of the time, but the combination of many moves will be the best combination only rarely. Example, when the best move is chosen 80% of the time, the best sequence of 10 moves is chosen only less than 11% of the times. The truth is even much worse, since the best answer is not considered in the playouts at all, and In the tree, it takes a long time before nodes have enough visits to assert anything about what the best answer is. In terms of Go, this difficulty with long sequences explains what players see. Problems with semi. The evaluation of a semi will only be correct when it is played in a reasonable sequence. Problems with Ko, at least as considered by strong players. Of course, the engine is strong enough to beat Q players at Ko, and that is almost a miracle since the engine finds the entire Ko and threat strategy by itself without any knowledge implemented in it. But a 5-dan engine isn't outplayed at Ko by a 5-dan human too easily. Also, close endgames are a problem. The engine will not get the correct evaluation since the endgames depend on Sente and Gote. Playing the whole sequence in one order may differ from playing it in another order by a few points, and when these points decide the game, the engine does not see the winning path frequently enough. This idea is a very interesting way to look at the whole picture, and it was pointed out by Yamato, who is the main author of the Go program Zen, the strongest nowadays. He used the Japanese words Yomi, which means reading, for the tree search, and Kankaku, which is feeling, for the evaluation from the playouts. Note that the engine is not doing something so different of what humans do. It reads sequences of plausible moves, and when it reaches the end of the reading, it does a random experiment which represents the Kankaku. It is the feeling we have about the resulting position. Of course, humans do it a few times and very accurately, and computers do it thousands of times, and only the whole picture makes sense. And here comes the important point justifying the need of opening knowledge. The opening is just another case in which the MCTS engine is weak, and for the same reason as in all other cases. The engine does not follow long sequences accurately. In other words, it cannot evaluate territory in the sides and in the corner as humans because it does not understand Joseki and opening principles. Strong human players who specialize in beating the strongest engines have declared in public that when they do not get advantage in the opening, they just resign because later the engine becomes too strong. Note that the length of a played-out game from the opening is between 501 and 552 moves long 50% of the times. That is what IQR means. The tree search is only exceptionally like 20 moves long. In the opening, it is much less because few moves are forced. This means the tree is just floating in over 500 moves of random Kankaku, which is Q level even in the strongest engines. How could the tree search understand the position without additional help? Thanks to the internet, large collection of high-quality games can be found. In our research, we used one collection with more than 55,000 games, about 1/3 of which is played by pro players and the others by high-dan players on internet servers, filtering all kinds of lower quality games like fast games and handicap games. Searching patterns in these game collections and evaluating the position is an interesting research area. And like in other games, just extracting full board opening in 19x19 Go is not useful. It is still a good idea because the engine gets some free thinking time and the opening looks better. There is no fixed number of opening moves expected. The game gets very fast into a position that is not found in the database. A typical book with about 25,000 positions will only rarely play the first 8 moves, and that will only happen against programs with a book extracted from a similar collection. Against humans, the book will only reach move 4 or 5 most of the times. Another seemingly interesting idea is extracting patterns of stones with a fixed size and analyzing the urgency of playing at each intersection considering its neighbor stones. This was done with the intention of using it later as a play-out strategy, but experimental results were much worse than those of the strategies already mentioned. Nevertheless, it gives interesting information about shape, as urgent points are frequently weaknesses in the shape, and it was successfully implemented in M-Eval, the evaluation function for openings described here. Also, the collection can be used as a large set of positions. To avoid statistic dependency among positions from the same game, only 2 positions were taken from each game, all from the opening. The final positions of the games were evaluated, games were scored paying special attention to where territory was found in the end. Strategic concepts described by Go teachers, usually through examples, have no simple mathematical definition. In our work, which started in 2009, we tried many ideas. The first version of M-Eval used 19 different ways to evaluate the position. It was complicated in other ways also, like implementing 2 different types of search. It still managed to make the program stronger, which was the first MCTS version of our program, around 14Q at the time. That was before we got a correct playout strategy and other important improvements. Even with these simplified ideas, we could see that we were working on something useful because it could be used to measure the strength of human players. Of course, it cannot reliably determine if the players are strong amateurs or pros from just one position, but it can do it with statistical soundness from a large collection of positions. This does not tell us anything we did not already know, but for the first time we have a mathematical model that measures it. Pro players get simultaneously more territory and influence than strong amateur players. In both pictures we can see that, measured using 6 different mathematical definitions of territory, by the way, none of which is the current beta function used now, and 4 ways of measuring influence. Also, as expected, pros make stronger shape than amateurs, although not all the 7 ways to measure strength work equally well. And simultaneously, they fight semi by smaller margin, i.e. more accurately. This semi definition is still used in the current version. When we started with this, we were more concerned about trying things that made sense, and we spent some more time doing this kind of analysis. Now we did not repeat the statistical analysis for the current versions, since we are more focused in making the program stronger. We already know M-Eval is a good idea. The current functions can be found in the paper. There is not just one strategic concept to consider, and there is certainly not just one way to define it mathematically. Mathematical functions to measure, for instance, territory in open positions are just oversimplifications. But human players do such things as well, like assigning a value to an isolated stone in Sansan or to a Shimari. The important is that these evaluations are consistent with the resulting evaluations when we add stones to them. Therefore, our evaluation function is multivariate in essence. We just evaluate lots of functions and try to find correct weights for each of them to get a real value of the positions. Multivariate analysis techniques help us understanding how redundancy due to correlation can be found in the dataset. Using principal components, the total variance in the dataset can be decomposed in variance explained by each principal component. In the picture, we can see the percentage of variance explained in each set of variables. The first value is the percentage explained by the first principal component, the next is the second, and so on. Strategic concepts such as territory, strength, and influence are positive values each player wants to maximize. We name these non-negative values qualities, and from the possible multivariate analysis techniques we use a decomposition technique that is intended to preserve the non-negative nature of these qualities. The mathematical details can be found in the paper. That technique is non-negative matrix factorization, NMF for short. We really use it not to get the weights reducing the multivariate evaluation to a real value, but as an intermediate dimensionality reduction technique. Also, we use a version of NMF that minimizes the amount of information lost in the reduction. After that, we use online learning to find the final projection. These details are not really important, and lately we have been experimenting with a new version that reduces dimensionality to 1 in just one step. Besides the already mentioned patterns around each possible next move, we analyze the board divided in regions from different sizes. These regions are small corners, which are not enclosed by empty intersections, big corners, which are, and big sides. In these areas, we study common patterns seen in a large amount of games and learn their possible answers. Besides what the answers are, we also learn how frequently each answer is found. This gives us a good idea of possible human continuations to move in places where known patterns are found, even when the rest of the board is too complicated to judge by simple methods. This provides the engine with Joseki sequences that will be considered together with the candidate moves and compete with them. Of course, this definition of Joseki only means frequently found in that place. Joseki should also be about optimality, which we are not analyzing here. It is also worth mentioning how we finally changed territory evaluation to estimation by regression. Once we have identified the frequently seen patterns, we can look for the outcome of all the games, including each pattern. And since we have evaluated each game outcome in terms of territory for each color, we have a good estimate of what each pattern may result when played by strong players. In any case, stronger than the engine. In the picture, we can see some patterns producing high predicted territory. We would expect that from the upper two patterns. The lower patterns are less obvious, but we can see that the shapes are easy to defend and will not be easily traded for something else. We could also think that the parts of the board not containing known patterns are a problem, but since the moves studied in the evaluation are generated by the patterns, they frequently result in other patterns whose territory is also estimated. What M-Eval does is analyzing these changes in known estimated territory rather than trying to estimate the absolute value. In this picture we see how this works for big sides as well. As we could expect, the patterns resulting in bigger territory have all stones from the same color. The first one has only 3 stones and is the well-known Chinese Fuzeki. Of course, this is not a real proof that this pattern is optimal, because the estimation is biased by the fact that humans play it frequently because they think it is good. MCTS engines assign a priori information to the newly created nodes when the tree is expanded. This decides the order in which the nodes are explored for the first time and also gives chances of exploring again soon a node that resulted in bad values but was classified as a good answer a priori. Current version of M-Eval adds strong a priori information to the nodes representing Joseki moves. When the root node is expanded for the first time, it does a short minimax search to evaluate each move from the minimax values of the possible continuation following Joseki moves and Joseki answers. For the sake of speed, in further expansion, it no longer searches but always evaluates the comparison between the board before and after the move is played. we ran a large series of experiments on M-Eval. The first time, we only focused on making a different program, Mogo, evaluate the resulting positions rather than playing out to the end, since after the opening, M-Eval is not used anymore. This was tried for different Komi offsets against the M-Eval version to find out the Komi value re-establishing the equilibrium. This resulted in 16 points advantage in 50 moves. Of course, the engine was weak, otherwise such an improvement would not have been possible. A series of experiments ran at the end of 2011 with an engine that is about as strong as today shows more improvement in slower games. That improvement is about 50 elo points. Note that this still strong improvement is in part due to the move generator following more Joseki moves. But if M-Eval becomes a way to judge which Joseki works in the current position and which doesn't, it is already very good. Implementing Joseki is hard in an MCTS engine. With too much weight, it may choose the wrong Joseki, and with too little, the engine may not like it since it doesn't see the complete sequence. Summarizing, we started with this idea in 2009, and it has evolved to make the program stronger. Currently, our program is reaching the showdown barrier, but still requiring more simulations than other programs like Fuego. This is still a lot behind the top programs like Zen and Crazy Stone, which are 5 dan on the same scale. But M-Eval is always an improvement. Lately, we have been working in replacing NMF with just the set of weights making the program stronger. These weights are computed through self-play using CLOP optimization. This idea has the potential of improving any kind of MCTS engine, something, of course, we do not know for sure, since implementing this in another engine is a lot of work and we are more focused in making our own engine stronger. If you want more about this work, here is a URL where you can find the first version of the paper as it was accepted in 2010 and the current version submitted to this Congress. Thank you very much for your attention. Hello, I'm Jacques Basaldua. I am online for the questions.
Yeah, are there any questions?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
I can hear you. That's great. So I have just a basic question. So if I understood correctly, just kind of to simplify it for my brain, the whole idea is MCTS, but optimizing it using using algorithms for minimizing the amount that needs to be searched. So you're really not changing the algorithm of the search pattern, but you are selecting which branches to search first, and therefore optimizing a result. Is that accurate?
Yes, one way or another, all improvements to MCTS are about searching the best moves first and organizing this. And this improvement is specific for the opening in 19 by 19.
So how many decades is it going to take where optimizations don't matter anymore and a somewhat full search is the most optimum?
No, that's probably never going to happen, because the problem is so complicated that it exposes more than astronomically. Usually this kind of comparison is an exaggeration, but in this case, with combinatorial problems that are so hard, it is really an understatement. So really exploring all the options will never be possible. So we have to find plausible ways, and different parts of the game may have different needs. So this really applies in the opening when the program is still understanding some patterns that are not obvious for other kinds of Monte-Carlo improvements, but that can follow these Joseki patterns in a way that is much more similar to what a human would do. And therefore we get, in this case, an evaluation that is more accurate.
Okay, thank you. And so what we're going to do is capture that statement that it will never be possible. And just like Bill Gates said, 640K, no one will ever need more than that. In 50 years, we'll all have a good laugh.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Buenos dias, muchas gracias. I think I don't understand about the 500 to 550 ply search depth that was mentioned. I think I need to read this. It's too much for this little bit of time. But the Goban only has 361 vertices. So what was that 550 number?
The what number? Sorry?
The search, I interpreted it as a search depth of about 550.
Oh yes, because it's the length of the game, but it's not a game as humans would play it. But as you have seen in the video, it's games where the final position can be scored. So there are lots of things human would consider silly.
So
that
the possibility
especially happen at the end of the game.
The
So these games are so long.
The possibility of capturing half the board and then playing again in that space is so great that it brings the average up over 500. That's remarkable.
Well,
but
because there are stopping rules related with understanding eye shape.
Right, right.
So it never plays its own eyes for that reason. Otherwise, the games would be almost infinite. So these stopping rules are what gets this game length that may seem very long for humans, because human games are about 200 or 300 moves at maximum. But these sillier games are longer, especially because they end up fighting every bit of territory.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? For our live audience, remember on the website for the symposium are email addresses of the presenters, so you can email questions. So, okay, thanks a lot, Jacques.
Okay, thanks very much.
Whoops.